Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The quantum sensors flickered with an intensity that made Dr. Rowan Everhart's breath catch in her throat. 3 decades of research had prepared her for extraordinary discoveries, but nothing could have readied her for the anomaly dancing across the holographic display. Quantum physics was her life's passion, a delicate dance of probabilities and wave functions that most people found incomprehensible. But this was different. The signal emerging from the deepest recesses of space carried a signature that defied every mathematical model in her extensive database. Franklin, she called to her research assistant, her voice a mixture of excitement and trepidation, run a diagnostic on the quantum interferometer. I want to be absolutely certain we're not experiencing a system glitch. Franklin Nguyen, a brilliant young physicist with wire-rimmed glasses and perpetually disheveled hair, moved swiftly across the laboratory. The Advanced Quantum Research Facility in northern New Mexico was a marvel of modern scientific architecture, a gleaming complex of glass and titanium nestled against the rugged desert landscape. From the outside, it looked like a futuristic mirage. Inside, it was a temple of scientific exploration. The facility's primary quantum sensors were designed to detect the most minute fluctuations in spacetime, capable of measuring quantum entanglement across astronomical distances. They were supposed to be immune to standard interference, shielded by multiple layers of quantum error correction algorithms. Yet the signal persisted. It wasn't just a simple wave or a random burst of electromagnetic radiation. This was a structured transmission that seemed to pulse with an almost deliberate rhythm. Each cycle carried a complexity that suggested intelligence, not human intelligence, but something fundamentally different. The diagnostics are clean, Franklin reported, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. No internal system errors. Whatever we're detecting is coming from, well, somewhere extraordinary. Rowan zoomed in on the data visualization. The signal resembled an intricate quantum knot, its parameters shifting in ways that challenged fundamental understanding of information transmission. Traditional communication protocols relied on linear information transfer, but this was more like a three-dimensional conversation happening simultaneously across multiple probabilistic states. It's like someone is whispering, Rowan muttered, but the whisper is happening in every possible direction at once. The orange-tinted display continued its mesmerizing dance. Initial spectral analysis suggested the signal originated from a region near the constellation Carina, approximately 7,500 light-years from Earth. But distance meant little in quantum mechanics, where entanglement could instantaneously connect particles across unimaginable spans. Franklin's hand trembled slightly as he adjusted the sensor calibrations. Dr. Everhart, the signal's quantum coherence is maintaining stability far beyond what our current models predict. It's as if it wants to be detected. Wants? The word hung in the air, laden with implications that pushed against the boundaries of scientific objectivity. In the world of quantum mechanics, intentionality was a dangerous concept, a philosophical rabbit hole that could lead brilliant minds into speculative madness. Rowan knew they were standing at the precipice of something monumental. This wasn't just another astronomical curiosity. This was a message, encrypted in the fundamental language of reality itself. Prepare full recording protocols, she instructed, her voice steady despite the electric anticipation coursing through her veins. We're going to document every single quantum state transition. Whatever is trying to communicate with us, I want to understand its language. Little did Dr. Rowan Everhart know that this quantum whisper was merely the first ripple of a cosmic event that would fundamentally reshape humanity's understanding of existence. An event that would soon transform from a scientific curiosity into a reality that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. The orange giant was approaching, and it was sending a message. The International Space Monitoring Station cut a stark silhouette against the endless Siberian wilderness. Rows of massive radio telescopes stretched across the snow-covered landscape like mechanical sentinels, their parabolic dishes pointed toward the infinite darkness of space. Inside the main control room, Nadia Volkov watched the incoming data streams with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She had been tracking the quantum anomaly first detected by the New Mexico research team for 3 sleepless days. International protocols demanded collaboration, and the quantum signal had quickly become the most discussed scientific phenomenon of the decade. Incoming transmission from the European Space Agency, announced Dmitry Petrov, her senior communications specialist. His voice carried the weight of decades of experience in deep space monitoring. They're requesting our full spectral analysis from the past 72 hours. Nadia's fingers danced across the holographic interface, compiling the massive data set. Her background was unique, a fusion of astrophysics, advanced linguistics, and communication theory. Where most saw random noise, she saw patterns. Where others heard silence, she detected whispers. The signal was unlike anything in human communication archives. It didn't follow any known transmission protocol. Instead, it seemed to fold and unfold, creating complex quantum states that defied traditional understanding of information transfer. "Look at this," she muttered, zooming into a particular data cluster. "The signal isn't just a transmission, it's more like a conversation with space itself." Dmitri raised an eyebrow. Conversation with what? Before Nadia could respond, an alarm blared across the monitoring station. Multiple sensor arrays began to vibrate, their sensitive equipment picking up unprecedented levels of quantum interference. The holographic displays flickered, momentarily transforming the sterile control room into a canvas of dancing light and shadow. "Electromagnetic surge detected," a computer-generated voice announced. "Quantum coherence approaching critical threshold." Nadia's training kicked in. Years of working in one of the most advanced space monitoring facilities in the world had prepared her for unusual phenomena. But this was different. The quantum signal was no longer just a passive transmission, it was actively probing, seeking something. She recalled the initial reports from Dr. Rowan Everhart's team. The quantum whisper they had first detected was now evolving, growing more complex with each passing hour. It was as if something massive was preparing to communicate or perhaps to arrive. "Dmitri, isolate the quantum frequency modulation," she instructed. "I want to see if there's any repetitive structure we might have missed." The senior specialist complied, his fingers moving with practiced precision. Layers of data began to peel away, revealing intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. "It's not random," Nadia whispered. "This is a message, but the language, it's not using any form of communication we understand." The signal seemed to originate from a region near the Carina constellation, the same area Dr. Everhart had initially traced. But now it was growing stronger, more defined. Quantum entanglement measurements showed impossible connections, suggesting the transmission was simultaneously existing in multiple states. A sudden burst of data overwhelmed their systems. Quantum coherence levels spiked beyond any previously recorded measurement. The radio telescopes outside began to rotate autonomously, as if being guided by an unseen intelligence. "System override," Dmitri shouted. "We're losing control of the monitoring equipment." Nadia remained calm, her eyes fixed on the cascading data. Something was happening, something unprecedented. The quantum whisper was transforming, preparing to reveal its true nature. "We're not just receiving a message," she said softly, more to herself than to Dmitri. "We're being invited to something, a cosmic conversation that transcends our current understanding of communication." Outside, the Siberian wilderness stretched endlessly, a silent witness to the extraordinary moment when humanity might be on the brink of its most significant discovery. The orange giant was getting closer, and its message was beginning to take shape. And Nadia Volkov was determined to understand its language. The holographic display in the European Space Agency's mission control rippled with an unnerving energy. Ezra Malik leaned forward, his dark eyes narrowing as he studied the impossible gravitational readings streaming in from the Jupiter probe network. Something was fundamentally wrong with the solar system's dynamics. "Confirm the data," he called out to his team, his voice cutting through the low hum of sophisticated equipment. "I want triple verification on these gravitational fluctuations." Dr. Helena Rodriguez, the lead planetary dynamics specialist, ran her fingers across multiple sensor interfaces. Her usually composed demeanor was cracking under the weight of the emerging evidence. "It's consistent across all probe measurements. The gravitational fields around Jupiter are distorting." Ezra had built his reputation on pushing the boundaries of space probe engineering. The current Jupiter mission was his most ambitious project, a network of 12 advanced probes designed to map the complex gravitational interactions of the Jovian system with unprecedented precision. What they were seeing now defied every established model of planetary mechanics. The probes were detecting a gravitational wave unlike anything in scientific records. It wasn't just a simple perturbation or a standard celestial movement. This was a deliberate, structured warping of spacetime that seemed to originate from beyond the solar system's known boundaries. "Look at this," Ezra muttered, zooming into a specific data cluster. The gravitational signature was creating a complex geometric pattern, almost like a massive, invisible hand was reshaping the fundamental fabric of space around Jupiter. Helena pulled up comparative models. It's as if something is preparing a pathway, but for what? The timing coincided with the quantum signals detected by research teams in New Mexico and Siberia. What had begun as a curious scientific anomaly was rapidly transforming into something far more significant. Ezra's mind raced through potential explanations. Gravitational lensing, quantum entanglement on a solar system scale, the probes continued to feed data, each transmission more bizarre than the last. One of the junior researchers, Marcus Werner, burst into the control room, his face pale. "The orbital mechanics of Jupiter's moons are changing. It's subtle but definitive. Something is fundamentally altering their trajectories." The Europa probe, positioned closest to the anomaly, began transmitting extraordinary data. Its sensors detected massive energy fluctuations that seemed to pulse with an almost rhythmic precision. It wasn't random interference, it was communication. "We're looking at a gravitational communication," Ezra realized, his voice barely above a whisper. Not just a signal, but a complex message written in the language of spacetime itself. The orange-tinted display continued its mesmerizing dance of data. Each moment revealed another layer of the cosmic mystery. The gravitational anomaly was expanding, creating a complex quantum tunnel that seemed to reach far beyond the solar system's known limits. Helena's hand trembled slightly as she highlighted a particular data point. "The gravitational waves are creating a kind of quantum corridor. It's as if something is preparing to traverse space in a way we've never conceived possible." Ezra understood the implications immediately. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was first contact, not through radio signals or traditional communication, but through the fundamental laws of physics themselves. The probes continued their silent observation, collecting data that would reshape humanity's understanding of the universe. Something was coming, something massive, and it was using the very fabric of space as its messenger. The orange giant was no longer just approaching, it was announcing its arrival. And humanity was just beginning to understand the language of its approach. The African Quantum Research Institute in Nairobi hummed with an electric anticipation. Sunlight streamed through advanced photovoltaic windows, casting prismatic reflections across laboratories filled with cutting-edge quantum computing systems. Dr. Imani Okoro stood at the epicenter of a scientific revolution that was about to redefine the boundaries of human understanding. Her specialty was theoretical quantum mechanics, with a particular focus on quantum communication and entanglement. The global scientific community had been sharing data about the mysterious cosmic signal for weeks, and Imani had been piecing together a theory that was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. "The quantum communication is creating a multi-dimensional communication network," she explained to her research team, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that displayed complex quantum wave patterns. "It's not just a signal. It's a living, breathing network of information that transcends our traditional understanding of communication." Dr. Kamau Achieng, her senior quantum systems analyst, looked skeptical. "Living, that's a bold statement, Imani." She smiled, a gleam of intellectual excitement in her eyes. "Not living in the biological sense. Living in the sense of a dynamic, self-organizing system that adapts and responds. Look at these entanglement patterns." The holographic display revealed intricate quantum connections that seemed to pulse and shift with an almost organic rhythm. Where traditional communication relied on linear information transfer, this quantum network appeared to communicate simultaneously across multiple probabilistic states. A series of quantum computers began to resonate, their quantum bits synchronizing in ways that defied conventional computational logic. Imani had designed these systems to be hypersensitive to quantum anomalies, but nothing could have prepared them for what was happening now. "The signal is creating quantum bridges," she murmured. "Connections that span not just space but potentially different dimensions of reality." The Research Institute's most advanced quantum computer, a massive system nicknamed Uhuru after the Swahili word for freedom, began to generate unprecedented computational outputs. It was as if the machine was not just processing information, but actively engaging in a conversation with the cosmic signal. Sudden alarms erupted across the laboratory. Quantum coherence levels were spiking beyond any previously recorded measurements. The very fabric of quantum reality seemed to be folding and unfolding in complex, mathematically perfect patterns. "We're detecting quantum communication that suggests intentionality," Kamal reported, his voice a mix of scientific excitement and underlying fear. "The signal isn't just transmitting information, it's negotiating." Imani's research had always pushed the boundaries of quantum theory. She had proposed radical theories about quantum consciousness, suggesting that information itself could be a form of sentience. Now, those theoretical models were being validated in the most extraordinary way possible. The cosmic signal was creating a quantum communication network that seemed to be actively searching, probing, understanding. It was learning about humanity through the very quantum systems designed to detect it. "It's like we're being examined," Imani whispered. "Not just observed, but comprehensively understood at the most fundamental level of reality." Quantum entanglement measurements showed connections that were theoretically impossible. Particles were communicating across distances that should have been barrier by the speed of light, creating a network that suggested a fundamental reimagining of space, time, and communication. A massive quantum burst erupted from the Uhuru system. For a brief moment, the entire research institute was bathed in a soft, orange-tinted light that seemed to pulse with an intelligent rhythm. "We're not just receiving a message," Imani realized, her voice filled with a mixture of scientific wonder and profound existential understanding. "We're being invited to a conversation that will redefine what it means to be conscious, to communicate, to exist." The orange giant was no longer just approaching. It was establishing first contact, not through traditional means, but through the most fundamental language of the universe itself. And humanity was about to learn its first words. The private launch facility in Chile's Atacama Desert was more than just a technological marvel. It was Victor Ray's testament to human ambition. Nestled between razor-sharp mountain peaks and endless stretches of rust-colored earth, the complex represented the pinnacle of private space exploration technology. Ray stood in the central command center, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Unlike traditional aerospace moguls, he wasn't just interested in commercial space travel or satellite deployment. He had built his fortune on a singular, audacious vision, preparing humanity for extraordinary cosmic encounters. "Compile all global research," he instructed Maria Rodriguez, his chief scientific coordinator. "I want every single data point from the quantum detection teams." The holographic displays came alive with a mosaic of scientific findings: gravitational anomalies, quantum signals, unprecedented cosmic communications. What had begun as isolated scientific observations was now a global phenomenon that defied conventional understanding. Victor Reyes was uniquely positioned to respond. His aerospace company, Horizon Dynamics, had developed a network of advanced deep space probes and communication systems that dwarfed government capabilities. Where national space agencies were bound by bureaucracy, he could move with unprecedented speed and flexibility. "The signal is creating a communication network," Maria explained, her fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. "But it's not just transmitting, it's adapting, learning." Reyes had spent decades preparing for a moment like this. His private research teams had developed technologies that pushed the boundaries of human scientific understanding. Quantum communication arrays, gravitational wave detectors, interdimensional signal processors, all developed in secret, waiting for this precise moment. A secondary display showed real-time global reactions. Scientific communities were in a state of controlled excitement. Military establishments were on high alert. Religious institutions were experiencing unprecedented theological debates. "Prepare the quantum communication array," Reyes commanded. "We're going to attempt a direct response." The facility's most advanced system, a quantum communication network that could theoretically transmit information across multiple dimensional states, began to power up. It was a technological marvel that represented decades of research, billions of dollars of investment, and the culmination of Ray's life's work. Maria looked concerned. Sir, we don't know the potential consequences of direct communication. The signal's complexity suggests a level of intelligence far beyond our current comprehension. Ray smiled, a weathered, knowing expression that spoke of decades of calculated risk-taking. We're not just trying to communicate, we're trying to understand. The orange-tinted signal that had been detected globally began to pulse with increased intensity. It was as if the cosmic entity was aware of their preparation, anticipating their response. Quantum communication arrays synchronized across the facility. Multiple backup systems stood ready. This wasn't just a scientific experiment. It was humanity's first deliberate attempt to establish contact with an intelligence that operated beyond conventional understanding. Transmission sequence initiated, a computer-generated voice announced. The facility's massive quantum communication array began to pulse, a complex, multi-dimensional transmission that attempted to mirror the intricate communication patterns of the cosmic signal. It was like playing a sophisticated musical instrument that could simultaneously exist in multiple realities. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the response came, not in any human language, not through radio waves or electromagnetic signals, but through a quantum communication so complex it made their most advanced systems seem like primitive drums. The orange giant was no longer just approaching. It was ready to make contact. The Quantum Dynamics Research Center in Berlin was a cathedral of scientific innovation. Dr. Julian Reinhardt stood before a massive interdimensional analysis chamber, his fingers tracing the intricate quantum interface that dominated the central laboratory. Years of research into theoretical physics had prepared him for extraordinary discoveries, but nothing could have readied him for the dimensional anomaly now unfolding. The spatial temporal distortions are accelerating, Dr. Annika Weber reported, her voice tight with a mixture of scientific excitement and profound apprehension. Multiple holographic displays showed complex mathematical models of reality itself beginning to warp and fold. Julian understood what others could not. This wasn't just a cosmic event, it was a fundamental restructuring of dimensional boundaries. The orange-tinted signal that had been detected globally was more than a communication. It was a key, slowly unlocking the very fabric of reality. "We're witnessing a dimensional breach," he muttered, more to himself than to his team. "Not an invasion, not a traditional first contact, something far more profound." The research center's most advanced quantum sensors began to resonate at frequencies that defied conventional physics. Where most scientists saw impossible data, Julian saw a language, a complex communication that transcended human understanding of space, time, and consciousness. Quantum entanglement measurements showed connections that should have been theoretically impossible. Particles were communicating across dimensions, creating a network that suggested a fundamental reimagining of reality itself. "The dimensional integrity is becoming permeable," Annika warned, her fingers flying across multiple computational interfaces. "We're detecting quantum tunnels that suggest multiple realities are beginning to intersect." Julian's life's work had been dedicated to understanding the theoretical boundaries between dimensions. He had proposed radical theories about quantum consciousness, suggesting that reality was far more fluid than traditional physics suggested. Now, those theoretical models were being validated in the most extraordinary way possible. The laboratory's massive interdimensional analysis chamber began to pulse with an orange-tinted light. It was as if the very walls of reality were breathing, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. "We're not just observing," Julian realized, his voice a whisper of scientific revelation. "We're being invited to understand a form of communication that exists beyond our current conception of existence." Sudden quantum fluctuations created holographic projections that defied traditional understanding. Fragments of potential realities flickered in and out of existence, glimpses of worlds, dimensions, and possibilities that existed simultaneously and yet were fundamentally disconnected. "The dimensional breach is creating a communication network," he explained to his increasingly anxious team. "Imagine language that isn't spoken or written, but exists as a living, breathing mathematical construct that can simultaneously exist in multiple states of being." The orange giant was no longer just approaching. It was restructuring the very foundations of reality, creating a bridge between dimensions that human consciousness could barely comprehend. A massive quantum burst erupted from the interdimensional analysis chamber. For a brief moment, the entire research center was bathed in a light that seemed to exist in multiple colors simultaneously, a visual representation of the impossible communication happening at the most fundamental level of existence. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of communication," Julian whispered, his eyes reflecting the impossible light. "A language that doesn't just transmit information but creates reality itself." The dimensional breach was complete, and humanity was about to learn its first words in a language beyond words. The Quantum Dynamics Research Center in Berlin was a cathedral of scientific innovation. Dr. Julian Reinhardt stood before a massive interdimensional analysis chamber, his fingers tracing the intricate quantum interface that dominated the central laboratory. Years of research into theoretical physics had prepared him for extraordinary discoveries, but nothing could have readied him for the dimensional anomaly now unfolding. "The spatial-temporal distortions are accelerating," Dr. Annika Weber reported, her voice tight with a mixture of scientific excitement and profound apprehension. Multiple holographic displays showed complex mathematical models of reality itself beginning to warp and fold. Julian understood what others could not. This wasn't just a cosmic event, it was a fundamental restructuring of dimensional boundaries. The orange-tinted signal that had been detected globally was more than a communication. It was a key, slowly unlocking the very fabric of reality. "We're witnessing a dimensional breach," he muttered, more to himself than to his team. "Not an invasion, not a traditional first contact, something far more profound." The research center's most advanced quantum sensors began to resonate at frequencies that defied conventional physics. Where most scientists saw impossible data, Julian saw a language, a complex communication that transcended human understanding of space, time, and consciousness. Quantum entanglement measurements showed connections that should have been theoretically impossible. Particles were communicating across dimensions, creating a network that suggested a fundamental reimagining of reality itself. "The dimensional integrity is becoming permeable," Annika warned, her fingers flying across multiple computational interfaces. "We're detecting quantum tunnels that suggest multiple realities are beginning to intersect." Julian's life's work had been dedicated to understanding the theoretical boundaries between dimensions. He had proposed radical theories about quantum consciousness, suggesting that reality was far more fluid than traditional physics suggested. Now, those theoretical models were being validated in the most extraordinary way possible. The laboratory's massive interdimensional analysis chamber began to pulse with an orange-tinted light. It was as if the very walls of reality were breathing, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. "We're not just observing," Julian realized, his voice a whisper of scientific revelation. "We're being invited to understand a form of communication that exists beyond our current conception of existence." Sudden quantum fluctuations created holographic projections that defied traditional understanding. Fragments of potential realities flickered in and out of existence, glimpses of worlds, dimensions, and possibilities that existed simultaneously and yet were fundamentally disconnected. "The dimensional breach is creating a communication network," he explained to his increasingly anxious team. "Imagine language that isn't spoken or written, but exists as a living, breathing mathematical construct that can simultaneously exist in multiple states of being." The orange giant was no longer just approaching. It was restructuring the very foundations of reality, creating a bridge between dimensions that human consciousness could barely comprehend. A massive quantum burst erupted from the interdimensional analysis chamber. For a brief moment, the entire research center was bathed in a light that seemed to exist in multiple colors simultaneously, a visual representation of the impossible communication happening at the most fundamental level of existence. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of communication," Julian whispered, his eyes reflecting the impossible light. "A language that doesn't just transmit information but creates reality itself." The dimensional breach was complete, and humanity was about to learn its first words in a language beyond words.